What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to the Crypto Catch Up. Of course, your number one place to catch up on crypto. Now, in today's video, I want to let you know why we only have 3 to 4 days left until something rather important begins. There's a certain period in which historically I have made an absolute ton of gains from, and I want to explain to you exactly how this works and why it's something that you at least need to pay attention to. And so with that said, of course, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into the video. Let's get a feel for where the market's at, take a quick look at how the market's performing, some of our key metrics, and then we'll get into, of course, what we're focusing in on today. Guys, also don't forget, Margex, currently the exchange that we are working with that doesn't need KYC, doesn't need VPN, anyone in the world can start trading within minutes. It just now recently announced a $500,000 KASPA airdrop for those of you who do want to trade on Margex. You can use the link down in the description below. As I mentioned before, no KYC needed, and you can get your portion of this $500,000 KASPA airdrop. Some people being able to get, $5,000, $500, $1,000, $3,000 worth of KASPA. Kickstart your KASPA bag with the airdrop like this is absolutely amazing. Make sure you do go check that out down in the description below. Of course, this is the main exchange that I do trade on pretty consistently, so I do think that it is extremely good. Now, looking at the general market today, though, things are looking okay, right? I mean, they're looking okay. We saw some gains, we saw some losses, a lot of neutrality, especially within the last 7 days. I would say this is probably the calmest period we've seen in the world of crypto quite recently. We see Bitcoin 1 hour flat, 24-hour flat, 7-day down 1%. Same goes for Ethereum. Same goes for BNB. I mean, BNB actually performing a little bit more ugly in the last 7 days. But Solana flat, guys. XRP flat as per usual. Doge, Ton's recovering a little bit now that we have seen that the CEO has been indicted and released on certain conditions. So that is seemingly stabilizing a bit. But Tron, Cardano, all of these ones rather flat, especially in the top 10, top 15. Now, going outside the top 10, top 15, we can see a gradual hint of red over the last day, right? Things are a little bit red, but a lot of this is actually being held by some of your smaller ones, right? Popcat, dogs, etc. A lot of your bigger ones are a little bit more balanced. And then if you go towards the top 20-ish, you are starting to see a little bit more red as well. You're looking at the weeklies as well, something somewhat similar. Just a general touch of red, but not an extremely down market, right? Not an extremely absolutely destroyed market. Looking at this from more of a price perspective, what we can see is that, yeah, the market caught a little bit of momentum at the end of last week, lost a lot of that momentum as we did see those liquidations hit Bitcoin, and now things are somewhat flat as we do continue within this little descending channel that we've been in since March of 2024. You guys know I've always consistently said I think that this little downtrend in which we will break out of eventually, and I think this is going to lead to be one of the best buying channels that we could have been in before some type of growth. I think we're going to look back on this and be like, damn, why were we not buying even more within this descending channel? And that does kind of feed a little bit into what we're talking about today. But before we talk about what we're talking about today, a few more metrics, okay? Looking at the fear and greed index, we are currently sat at a 29, which is right below that 50% threshold on fear, which is pretty damn interesting, especially considering we got all the way back up to the freaking 54 zone just a few days ago, guys. I mean, this market's so volatile. It's moving in all sorts of directions, but we are back towards this little point of neutrality in which we've been in quite recently. And I've said, when we're in fear, I think it's a good time to buy. Quite easily that simple. Looking at the RSI heat map to kind of gauge whether that does withstand a little bit more, what we can see is that we are now on the daily charts below the neutral threshold, getting more towards the bottom side, headed towards maybe even this weak threshold for pretty much the entire market itself. Obviously TRX, Clay, and some of these other ones still up in these extended areas, but the majority of these ones either in the weak zone or below neutral zone, which historically is again a decent time to buy. And following this up, looking at the liquidation map, of course you guys know my favorite metric to look at, what we can see is that things have started to shift again. Currently speaking, we are seeing on the dailies more liquidations that will happen if this market goes to the downside than the upside. So I would be on the lookout for a possible continuation of this little pullback in which we're in. It wouldn't shock me if we see some type of little mini continuation here, something like this, back towards roughly, 50, I think 57, 58K is definitely within the realm of possibility. Zooming out towards the 7-day though, what you can see is that liquidations are heavily favored towards the upside, and on the 30-day we are oh, well, this thing is actually flipped. So that is, that's the first time what we've seen the 30-day flip. It must have flipped literally just a few hours ago, in which there are more liquidations that will happen towards the downside than the upside. So knowing that on the more macro sense, we're seeing more liquidations to the downside, and on the daily sense, we're seeing more liquidations to the downside, I definitely would be extremely careful right now. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a bull market, so you do have to just be careful. But it does seem, because this market might just take off to the upside out of nowhere, but it does seem like liquidations have built up, people betting that this market's about to go go up. So we might see some little wick towards the downside to liquidate some of those people. So I'd be rather careful doing a lot of purchasing at once right now. But I am going to be doing some purchasing. And you may say, well, Tyler, why is that? Well, actually, in about 3 days here, or 4 days roughly, I am going to be starting to do some daily dollar cost average because I've done this every single year for the exact same reason, and it's worked out for me most years. Now, what am I talking about? Well, what I'm going to head over to is the Bitcoin monthly returns percentage, okay? And what I want to show you guys is something that happens historically in the last 4 months of every year. What I do personally is every single time that September has come around since 2020, I have started to accumulate crypto, especially Bitcoin, because usually around this time of the year, we're still in Bitcoin season, which we are right now. And so, of course, I focus primarily on Bitcoin. And what we can see here is historically, this has worked out extremely well. What you can see is that in 2020 is when I started, which was this little line right here. And every month in the month of September, we're either a little bit positive or a little negative, right? We have had some ugly months, right? We saw 2020 rather ugly, or is this 2019? Yeah, this is 2019. That was a little ugly. Obviously, that was the very beginning of the pandemic. We obviously also saw 2014 was pretty ugly. This was the middle of the summer bear market, which we haven't really seen a bear market like that in the summer in a while. But again, primarily September is usually either a flat month, little positive, little negative, so not a lot going on. But following September, things tend to change. What you can see here is following September, as we enter into October, November, and December, the Q4 performance is usually the best performing quarter in the history of crypto. As you can see here, the average performance of Q4 in the world of crypto is 88.84% for Bitcoin specifically. Q3 only 5%, Q2 only 26%, Q1 only 56%. And so what that means is that at the end of Q3, you are typically going to be moving into Q4 and Q1, which are the best performing quarters or the best performing 6 months that the world of crypto has. And so as a result of that, what I like to do is I like to do daily dollar cost averages in the month of September as we go into the last month of Q3. Why? Because we have Q4 and Q1 approaching right after that. And every single time that I have done this in 2020, 2021, 22, and 23, we have seen good returns. Now, obviously, some years have been better than others. Obviously, 2020 was the best year that this has happened in because we got a positive October, November, and December. And then going into the next, we got a good January, February, March. So obviously, those September ones from 2020 were great. But even still, I mean, you can look at this like we've had, although, November and December were rather ugly, we saw a 39% pump in October, covered the losses taken here. Then going into the next thing, when we had 12.5 and 12% and 5%, even though we were going into a bear market, some of those purchases from that 2021 summer lull did extremely well. And then obviously 2023, this worked out extremely well. Purchasing some in September, then we got some October, November, December, January, February, March. These are very good months. And so we only have a couple days left until September does roll around. And so what I'm personally doing is I am preparing the portfolio that I want to kind of build for my September dollar cost average. It's like 75% Bitcoin, then it's Solana, then it's Ethereum, and then is the rest of my alts. Some of those being Render, some of those being JASMY, some of those actually being Ton, some of those being BNB. I am picking some of those up. And what I actually would like to do is maybe on September 1st, I would like to make a video going over the ones that I am going to be doing my daily dollar cost average, maybe how much I'm putting in, etc., etc. I know last year I did it was roughly like $1,200 a day that I was just buying and buying and buying. And then clearly that did super well as we went into the end of last year to the beginning of this year. So I do have intentions of doing something roughly similar, maybe a little bit more because the cash flow is a little bit better this year. And so with that in mind, guys, I just wanted to let you know, look, September is usually the last month where shit's pretty ugly. Sure, there are some times where Q4 and Q1 of the next year aren't good, but that's just not the average. And I like betting on what usually happens because that's the best odds that you can get realistically. And so I'm going to be doing some dollar cost averaging throughout the month of September. So what I would encourage you to do, if you want to take a similar approach, start planning now. Have an idea, have a game plan and a goal of what you want to accomplish throughout the month of September so that as October, November, December, and all of these do roll around, you are prepared and you had started as early in September as possible. And so, of course, as I mentioned before, don't forget, if you do want to kickstart that campaign, kickstart that DCA a little bit, you can access this KASPA airdrop, $500,000 up for grabs through Margex. Again, no KYC needed, no VPN needed. You can just get in on that. And so make sure you check that out. Send me the first link down in the description below. Feel free to use it if you want. And of course, make sure that you do tune in later today because I have a JASMY video coming out with our friend Kate O'Neill for you guys specifically. And so, of course, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I can't wait to see you all in the next catch up. Peace up, everybody.